Improvement week in the rearview mirror for the Buckeyes. It is back to work inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. It's back to work for Lettermen Row as well. That's Tim May, the 41-year vet. That's Andy Backstrom and me, of course, Spencer Holbrook. Let's talk about it. Ryan Day said he watched a lot of football. Chip Kelly also. Ryan Day actually encouraged his team to watch a lot of football, get some situational stuff, be able to think about what they would do in those situations. Took it to the practice field after that, took it to the meeting room. I think that's kind of interesting, but the big news of the day, Tim, is that Donovan Jackson is expected to return. I wanted to get your thoughts on that before we go into other lessons learned.
Let me see. What are my thoughts on that when there's a possibility of a preseason All-American returning to your offensive line who hasn't played on that offensive line the first two games of the year, and yet that offensive line has improved from one game to the next, in my opinion. I don't think it can do anything but enhance what is a ripening offensive line. Mm-hmm. Is that the right term?
Yeah, for sure.
A right line coming to fruition, which is sort of like ripening. But it's got to help you in a lot of ways. I know Donovan Jackson's probably feeling real good about it because we all three know, we watched him in warm-ups the last two games, the first two games of the year. Boy, nothing looks wrong with this guy.
Yeah.
Even as crisply as he was doing things,
Yeah.
But as we found out with Jackson Smith and Jigba, sometimes it's best to let things run their course and then a little bit more.
Yeah.
Before you push a guy back into a lineup, and that appears exactly what Ohio State has done with him, and it will benefit them immediately.
I thought it was interesting that for the improvement week, as they called it, they graded every single player. Every single player had like a different agenda of what they needed to work on. Will Howard's agenda was working on his footwork, as well as his post-snap and pre-snap reads. And Chip Kelly seemed confident that he got better in that week, and Ryan Day was the same way about talking about Will Howard, more comfortable just in general, being settled in. Spencer, you asked him, now you've played 2 games in Ohio Stadium, how are you feeling? He says he feels like he's settled in, like this is home now, this feels right, they're in the routine of the season. I think you get the sense that he's kind of bought in with just the understanding of how things work here. Like, it's one thing to talk about it and it's another thing to do it. Now he's done it. Now they had this idle week, and it seems like they've worked on some of the fundamental things, the technical stuff with his game that he's been great so far, but he wants to be even better so that when you're in Big Ten play, you're not missing that throw to Jelani Thurman in the end zone. You're not missing Jeremiah Smith downfield like he had that throw against Western Michigan. So I think that's what the importance of this week was. It's weird to have that off week so early in the season, but for Will Howard, it could be critical.
I think for the entire roster, it's critical. The media was very curious today about different formations, different ways that Ohio State plans to go about its business on offense, which is a good thing. I know you asked about tight end stuff. I also asked Chip Kelly about tight end stuff. The run game was a topic of conversation. There's just a general curiosity here about what's going to happen, in the coming weeks. And that includes, the most curious I am about anything is how this team plans to use Austin Saraveld. With Donovan Jackson coming back, it's interesting because they seem very set on getting Austin Saraveld back in the game. However that happens, is it at right guard with Tegra? No, Tegra's the starter now. Ryan Day officially said, no, he's earned the starting tag. Is it at left guard? Well, you're not taking potential All-American, like Tim said, Donovan Jackson off the field. And Seth McLaughlin is the team's starting center, and I don't think Austin Saraveld's ever snapped the ball. So where does that work? How does that work? I'm very curious to see.
Yeah, I think it's going to work kind of the way it's been working. He's going to go in for Donovan Jackson because, number one, you got Donovan Jackson back. You feel like he's full speed, but why push it? Why stretch it when you don't have to, so to speak?
Yeah.
I think you're going to see Austin Saraveld spell him on occasion, like you would see a running back going in for another running back or something.
Potentially,
like that. Yeah. I mean, that's where I think they'll go with that because they also want to keep Carson Hinsman and other guys in that right guard area. Maybe Luke Montgomery even. We'll see how much they think of him after the first several weeks, this coming week, this game against Marshall, how much he gets into the game, for example. But I think there are a lot of guys they want to keep playing because they keep reiterating or repeating or whatever ing you want to use there, that this is they're playing on a 16-game season. That's what they want to play, minimum 16 games. If it has to go to 17, there was a mix-up there, one game. We'll get to that later in the season, when and if that happens. But the bottom line is they want to push this, take it all the way to the nth degree, and they want depth. That's why I asked about the quarterback situation. We talked about that on Monday from the stadium. Is you saw 2 starting quarterbacks go out of games last week. One team responded extremely well, Texas, when Arch Manning went in for Quinn Ewers, And one team's their Wisconsin, their offense just kind of went down the drain when it lost its Tyler Van Dyke, and they put the kid who played some against Ohio State last year, Braden Locke, in the game. You've got to figure out a way to get these backup quarterbacks some time, some effective time in terms of experience against a team that's still playing against you, in a hard way, and you're still running your offense. Thought they did a good job of that against Western Michigan, but I think that has to continue. And I think Ryan Day and Chip Kelly understand that, but they also know they want Will Howard to be just getting to the nitty-gritty of this offense. The stuff that really make a difference, and you only do that by reps too in real game action. So that's a fine line they got to walk there, but they want this experience thing to be a real deal in November and December and January.
Well, it's not just with quarterbacks either. They talked about James Peoples today, obviously talking about Austin Sareveld today.
I left that for you to talk about.
I thought it was interesting the way that Chip Kelly talks about the pros and cons of having two running backs on the field at once, because you want to keep those guys fresh and the depth, and if they're going really hard 6 to 7 plays, then all of a sudden they're not fresh anymore, and then you've got to rely on a third running back, which they're getting closer to doing, but also we've played 2 games and James Peoples has fumbled in one. So it's all a process right now for this team,
life.
and you're seeing a lot of talent start to come together. You're seeing a lot of talent, work together, but at the same time, like last week was an improvement week. They needed that. They need to come out fast against Marshall. Ryan Day pretty complimentary of Charles Huff, I would say, and Marshall when he was asked today. You're seeing it all come together, but they're still very concerned, Andy, and it's very clear that they're concerned about, not concerned as in we don't know if we have it, but concerned about making sure the depth is getting the playing time it needs, and making sure the depth is where it needs to be for the 16 or 17 game schedule that Tim's talking about.
I feel like we've seen the depth so far, and that's one of the questions I was asking Chip Kelly, is the depth of this tight end room is helping his offense flexibility-wise. Some of the best plays from that game came out of 3 tight end sets. We also saw a touchdown out of a 4 tight end set. It's interesting. you lose Cade Stover, right? And he's the face of that room, second receiving last year for this team. But in a way, it actually helps the Chip Kelly offense more, having the depth of this room. Yeah, you don't have a Cade Stover. You probably don't have a guy who's going to get 500 receiving yards, but you have 4 guys, 5 even if you count Patrick Gerd, that you really can count on in blocking situations, which makes things a lot more creative on offense. And Chip Kelly, we knew, liked to do that at UCLA. We were just uncertain if they'd have the depth. And I think Keaton Bailey was originally going into spring ball. It was a test of, I'm only going to play the guys that are ready to play. Well, it seems like he got 4 or 5 guys ready to play, and now that's opening up things for Chip Kelly in this offense. So the depth is on display for some of those personnel groupings right away, and it will be all season, in my opinion.
I thought it was real quick. I thought it was funny when I asked Chip Kelly about those 4 tight end sets, 3 tight end sets, and the pros and cons of trying to pass out of them versus make sure to run out of them. And he said, well, we had a lot of success with it last week because we threw a 55-yard touchdown pass to Bennett Christian out of it. I said, well, yeah, but what are the cons about it? So he did give a pretty good answer. If you haven't watched the press conference, go check it out, because I thought Chip Kelly was really insightful on the tight ends. Both you and I, got some good answers out of him. So maybe good on us, maybe just good on Chip Kelly for being insightful.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing was the Austin Sareveld conundrum is possibly using him in that Bison role, which would maybe take a tight end. I don't know why they call it Bison instead of Buffalo. I like Buffalo a lot better, but the Bison role maybe takes a little bit of that off the tight ends plate. You know what I mean? From the standpoint, Patrick Gerd, to me, I think he factors into this offense no matter who they're playing. He had one of the great blocks, in that first game out on the edge, or cutting into the slot on the edge on a touchdown run. Great, well-blocked touchdown play, and he had one of the great blocks in that thing. So coming basically off a slot kind of set instead of fullback. But the bottom line is there are all kinds of ways they can go with this tight end room as long as these guys continue to improve. And you're right. Maybe they relied too much on Cade Stover last year. When you look back on it,
they did.
You can't go back and replay history, but maybe not trusting guys who might have been actually ready to offer you something. And so I think that's what's been interesting, is just seeing them sort through personnel in the first 2 games of the year, and then that improvement week of last week of knowing where they can go with certain things. Maybe some guys have surprised them. I think the tight end room is one of those slight surprises.
Do you know what I don't like sorting through, Tim? All of those different ticketing apps that can charge you
You
fees.
need one go-to. You need a go-to.
Can charge you fees, can get in your your head. You're trying to find the cheapest prices. Well, the cheapest prices on the GameTime app, especially when you use the code ON3 at checkout and get $20 off your first purchase. That's right. Go to the GameTime app, use the code ON3 at checkout and get $20 off your first purchase, Andy's first purchase, Tim's first purchase, mine too. We use it. Tim uses it for his rap concerts he likes to go to at Kemba Live.
And tractor pulls.
Andy likes it because he goes to the Ohio Theater, sees whatever he needs to watch, because he's a big theater guy, and then there's just me
East Coast.
using it however I need to. The GameTime app, GameTime Picks, is the new feature on the app. You can really customize the way that you see all the tickets. They also do this thing, really fun thing, where if you find a ticket, if you buy a ticket on GameTime, you find a ticket that's cheaper in the same section, the same row that you bought the ticket, and it's on a different app, you can send that into GameTime. They'll refund you 110% the difference. And then also you get $20 off your first purchase when you use the code ON3. That's GameTime.co and the GameTime app. Go there now, GameTime.co and the GameTime app. There are very, very cheap tickets for the Ohio State Marshall game this upcoming weekend. Big noon kickoff on Fox, or you can just be in the horseshoe to watch the action. Go to GameTime.co or use the GameTime app for your ticketing for the Ohio State Marshall game. Before we get out of here, Will Howard, more comfortable. Running backs sound like they're doing well. Tight ends, offensive line. We got no defense talk, so I would just want to ask real quick, Tim. Like
A little bit.
Yeah, un peu, as the French would say. What do you want to see from this defense coming up this week?
I don't know, but why do you always have to keep bragging you've been to France and I haven't?
Twice.
What do I want to see from this defense? I mean, it's incremental stuff, right? But you want to see them just. I thought they did this last game to a certain extent, but just really just take dominating control of the line.
Would you say that
you're the line of scrimmage? I mean, almost suffocating. That's what you want to see because the potential is there. As Ryan Day pointed out, they're not quite where they quite want to be with the two tackle slots from the standpoint of depth. They want to see those guys continue to develop, like Caden McDonald, right on down the line. You know, Tywan Malone, you know, he's been here for a couple of years now. You know, step up, you know, be that home run hitter, pardon the pun.
Yeah.
You know, that they're looking for.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah, right on down the line. So these little things you can watch on Saturday afternoon that can make all the difference in October and November of having playable depth that you really trust in the middle of the defensive line. I think they're getting there with Hero Canoe, obviously, and Caden McDonald, but then, you know, sometimes you need 6 there, man, to really feel really good about yourself. I think they're really close to getting that.
Tim just wants Hero to play well so he can make all these Hero and Canoe puns.
Yeah,
Oregon up creek without power.
Oh, no.
A couple safety notes. One,
Canoe.
we did hear that Caleb Downs, they're pressing pause in the whole running back thing. Not that that's super surprising, but
Who would have guessed?
Not wow. I thought they would have been playing from the get-go.
Who would have guessed?
you know,
They want to make him the best safety in the country, which I wonder if Lathan Ransom's heard that.
right. Yeah, those two have played a lot. I think 96 snaps through 2 games.
Yeah.
I think what you'd like to see from this defense, we've already talked about this before, but getting Malik Hartford more involved, getting Jalen McClain more involved so that if there is a targeting penalty, if there's an injury, if there's whatever reason you need to play one of those 2 young guys, that they're ready to go as well. Because I think that's one of the, I don't want to say weaker, but thinner position groups on the team as far as depth goes. And this is an opportunity to continue to build that depth.
Yeah, Jalen and Malik both, they're pretty thin guys. No.
Yeah, but when the coordinator
Great
says that,
dad joke there.
when the coordinator mentioned that a couple of weeks ago, you know, you do pay attention to that.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
You've got maybe the best safety tandem in the country, but after that, what have you got?
Well,
Because if you watched a lot of football on Saturday, you saw guys go in and out of games, man, and some of them not return. So it's key.
Lathan Ransom went out last year.
Yeah,
so, I mean,
exactly.
He's had injury problems throughout his career, and you know, you never know what's going to happen with any of these guys.
Ohio State will get Donovan Jackson back. That's the biggest headline of the day, but there was plenty more to break down here inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center with Tim May, the 41-year vet, with Andy Backstrom, and with me, Spencer Holbrook. Make sure to go to LettermenRow.com right now because that's where we break down all of this Buckeyes conversation, Buckeyes talk. Go to the Lettermen Lounge message board. We're going to be chatting there all day, every day, like we do all day, every day. And then on Saturday, we're going to head over to the Big Horseshoe and watch Ohio State and Marshall at noon. Until then, go to LettermenRow.com, get all that coverage. Subscribe to the YouTube channel below. Like the video below. It helps us out a ton. And then we'll see you guys back in here in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center on Wednesday night for more coverage of the Buckeyes. Until then, go to LettermenRow.com, get all that coverage from Andy, from Tim, and from me, Spencer.